Hey, welcome back, guys, to the We Don't Know It All podcast, episode 1. Can't wait to get into it.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This is episode 1. My name is Francisco. I am so excited to be here today, and I am with
Hey, my name's Caden.
Caden, the one and only Caden.
Come on.
Listen, we're super excited. It's episode 1, and it is happening. If you haven't had a chance to check out episode 0, you should totally check it out. It kind of tells you a little bit about who we are and what we plan to accomplish within this podcast. But today we're talking about
people we look up to.
Yeah.
People we have learned from.
Yeah.
So,
I think that role for me has changed several times as I've gotten older. I no longer look up to Spider-Man. I look up to somebody else, And so, that's kind of what we want to talk about today. We just want to unpack that with you guys just a little bit. And hopefully it kind of refreshes your mind a little bit. And hopefully it instills in you kind of like this sense of like, let me look back to the people who have influenced me and why they influenced me, right? Because it's important to see those things. And it's important to know that there are good traits that you maybe grabbed from someone that you should maybe revive in your life, right?
yeah. And I think too that there's different ways of viewing it, Like you have different ways that someone could influence you.
Right.
I have a ton of leaders in my life.
Right.
That don't know that I exist, but they have deeply influenced the way that I think, the way that I speak, the way that I learn, because I read what they have to say. I listen to what they have to say, and the way that they lead congregations or businesses or whoever it is. So who influences you doesn't have to be actually in your circle, And I don't think that people always take the time to evaluate, okay, who is influencing who I am today,
right?
And why does it matter to be intentional about that?
And you know what? And a little bit to what I said earlier, your influence, who influences you is gonna change, right? As you evolve as a person, I think that's a natural thing. But I think there are lessons that you have to learn, excuse me, that you have to learn and you have to go through at some point in that age, right? That then you start evolving into a better person. So I will forever be grateful to the people that influenced me at one point. Now, I'm not so sure that I would exactly follow them, into war with, or whatever the case is. But at the end of the day, they did influence me, and they did shape my life to a certain extent. So I don't know if you want to kickstart us off, Caden, and tell us about, maybe who influenced you when you were younger. Who influenced the young Caden?
The young Caden?
The young Caden.
Young Caden didn't recognize that people outside of his circle could influence him. I'm sure that there are people that did. When I was in 5th grade, I was diagnosed with a blood condition. And in that, I still have it today. It's called ITP, or that's at least the kind of acronym, the initials. But really, the condition, my blood doesn't clot, so I don't have enough platelets in my body. And because of that, they told me that I couldn't play sports. It's not that I couldn't be physical, but I couldn't put myself in positions that I could internally bleed or outwardly bleed or whatever. So all of that to say that my hobbies, who I was around, all of that kind of shifted around the age of 5th grade.
Right.
So I didn't really look up to, I wasn't influenced per se by very many athletes or your traditional celebrities, However, one of the hobbies I fully leaned into was movies and cinema, and I fell in love with it. Like, I know all these random movie facts,
sci-fi movies,
actors' names and whatever. And so one of those guys for me became Matthew McConaughey. Look, the dude's a little crazy. I mean, he's a little insane, but he lives life fully.
Right, cool.
I don't know that he's the best role model in the world, but the thing I've kind of picked out of his life, the thing that influenced me the most when I was younger, was his desire just to love life. Like, his most recent book, which obviously did not exist when I was in like junior high, but his most recent book, Green Lights, his literally title, like there's like a subtitle on the book that's called A Love Letter to Life.
Yeah.
And it's just this idea that like everything happens to you, like everything that does happen to you, it's not all good,
Yeah.
but it all shapes you into who you can be and who you are. And so like pull the most out of life that you can. So he was probably one of my younger influences.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. Here's the thing about Matthew McConaughey, right? You could take a simple sentence and I could say it and it would mean nothing.
Yeah.
But then Matthew McConaughey says it and you're like, all right.
Well, he took the most.
It's like his voice, the warmth in his voice.
It's the way, it's the slowness. It's the way he
yes.
accentuates words.
Mhm.
Like he took the most simple word probably in the English language, said it 3 times,
Yeah.
and now it's iconic.
Yeah.
And he just sits there and he goes, "All right, all right, all right."
That's
And it's
it.
just like I don't understand.
Now it's a thing
Yeah,
because
it's a
Matthew McConaughey said it in his interesting voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me this is kind of weird, right? But it's my graphic design teacher from freshman year. And
Okay.
to be honest, and I think this is where I'm hoping some of you guys connect with this. She literally hated me. Like she hated me. She did everything she could to push me out of the program. But because she did that, she influenced me in a way to make sure I never gave up.
Okay.
And sometimes when I'm about to give up on things, I remember her.
Yeah.
I'm not going to name her name because she's probably still teaching somewhere. But like that influenced me in such an insane way that literally like I did everything I could to prove her wrong.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this exists in your high school now, or I don't know because I graduated high school a while ago. But there was this whole program called VICA. And so VICA...
I went to a small private school. VICA did not exist in Wiley Preparatory Academy.
So what VICA meant is kind of like you being in leadership, right?
Yeah.
And so like they had to you had to choose a class president, you had to
Okay.
choose like a vice president, a treasurer, like all these secretary of treasury, all these positions, right? And I would have never thought for running for president until she told me I couldn't do it. And I ran for president and I actually got it. Did I do anything? Absolutely not. But like she influenced me in that way, right? And so now I look at my life completely, and because she told me, like verbatim said that I would never amount to anything, I opened a print shop and ran it for 10 years because I had to prove her wrong. And now my whole life is, you know, big part of it is ministry.
Yeah.
But a huge chunk of that, and you could say the way that I make my living is graphic design.
Yeah.
Is the things that she taught me. So that's who
Do you
influenced the young.
think? Do you think that there's no right or wrong answer to this?
Right.
Do you think that you still try, like a lot of your life decisions are trying to prove people wrong? Not specifically her, just people in general.
You know,
Or does it kind of stay with her for the most part?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. And I'm not trying to open up, you know, in the Latino culture, everyone tells you can't do it. So 90% of the things that I do is like, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it in such a way. I want to make the biggest bang possible because I need to prove people wrong. I need to prove people that I'm like doing something good.
Yeah.
And so that does tend to play a part in my decision making.
I wish I had a little more of that. I can see how that could be dangerous, but I wish I had a little more of that.
It can be.
Because I feel like I'm on the other end of the spectrum. Like if someone says you can't do something,
Right.
I'm like, I just shut down. I'm like, you are so right. Like I can't do this, you know? So I'm on the other end of the spectrum. So I wish
Yeah.
I had a little more of that.
I think had she like been the kind of teacher that just said like, yes, you can do it, you know, you're gonna get a participation award and everything that you do,
Yeah.
it would have been very different. I would have been like, okay, whatever. But that's one of like the biggest life lessons. Like that influence completely changed my life. I can literally trace it back to that one day that she said no, and I said, you're wrong. I
Yeah.
can. And it could have been like me feeling a completely different way that day, and I could
Yeah.
have maybe gone completely the other way. But for some reason that day I felt very like, I'm gonna conquer the world.
Yeah.
In freshman year of high school, and it just completely changed my life and shaped it in a completely different way.
Yeah.
So now I'm a graphic designer. Thank you for that. What, you know? So Caden,
Yeah.
and we gotta move because we're already at 10 minutes here.
Okay.
Who influences today's Caden? Who tells Caden, like, you know, what influences your mood or whatever it is that you do?
I think probably one of the bigger influences more recently, I found out his name. It's a pastor. His name's John Mark Comer.
Yeah.
I found out about John Mark last semester of senior year of college.
Okay.
So I was finishing up my bachelor's degree is in church leadership.
Yeah.
And I was finishing that degree while also working on my master's, which is in organizational leadership. So I was one semester I was doing both at the same time. And in that semester, someone this was in fall of 2019. So right before COVID happened, and everything. And John Mark had written it wasn't new at the time. It was one of his older books, but John Mark had written a book called Garden City. And it was all about like the theology behind work and the way that God had created us and gave us passions to pursue certain things. And how like there's value in work and there's value in rest. And he's the most, like John Mark Comer's most known for a book he wrote actually in fall 2009, around fall 2019, called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And that book marked my life for like it kind of, but it all started with Garden City. And so I've kind of been following John Mark for the last, I don't know, I guess 3 years now. And his like, this is from the outside looking in. I mean, he may not say this, but for me, his like passion in life is deep inner spiritual formation and how pursuing spiritual formation in a intentional way like changes all of you. Because I don't think God ever created us in such a way or intended us to be like, oh, well, we have this Christian part of us and then the rest of us, you know. It's like it's all one thing. Like we are the person that God created, and that includes our spirituality, that includes our families, our passions, our hobbies. And spiritual formation should affect all of that. But I learned he's probably one of the leading thinkers today in this topic, but he's not the first by any means. I mean, you have like Dallas Willard and John Ortberg and there's tons, but he was kind of the guy that influenced me the most.
There's people that you just connect with, like just the way that they speak certain things, and it's just the way that they do things. So here's a question for you, right? If you could have 5 minutes in a room with him, what would be like the one thing that you're like, I want to squeeze this out of you, like give me this knowledge? What would that be? I'm sorry to put you on the spot. That's kind of a loaded question.
No, that's fine. That's what podcasts are for, is loaded questions, right? Loaded questions from people who don't know what they're talking about. That's what it's about.
We don't know what we
if I could sit down with him truthfully, he did a podcast with Carey Nieuwhof, who is one of the leading leadership gurus of today. Check out his podcast. But in that episode, John Mark kind of chronicled his life. He started a church with his dad when he was around the age of 25. And it massively grew, like it was a mega church overnight, essentially. And there's so much that went into it that John Mark was he was stressed out, and the church was seeing success, but his life was kind of, I don't know that it was in shambles, but he just emotionally was not in a good place. And so he's made it clear, and they kind of dissolved the church. You can go listen to the whole story. It's a good story. But what he learned from that, I would want to sit down and just like talk to him about, do you think it's actually possible to have a healthy mega church, whether it's within your congregation, because you and I, we work at statistically what would be considered a mega church, and I love it. I mean, I love our leaders, I love North Place as a whole, but you go through seasons where you're like, I can't keep up with the pace at what I'm going right now.
It's hard at times,
and that seems to be a common thread in many mega churches. So I'd just be curious he's not an expert by any means, but I'd just be curious to hear his thoughts on that. So that's probably what I talked to him about.
You're gonna have me thinking about that one for a minute, because everybody, especially if you're in the ministry world, like you're gonna be involved in these areas, right? And once you get to an organization like North Place, where we're at, right, you're like, could I effectively, especially if you have a family, if you're like, could I really do this, or do I just need to accept the fact that I'm gonna have to not do certain things at a certain point in my life because I have to take care of my family? That's crazy. That's a really good answer. That's a really good answer.
Just
you weren't even ready for that.
No. I started to talk about spiritual formation because that's what he's known for.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he has a lot more in his head than what he's written, but
Yeah.
he's written so much on spiritual
Yeah.
formation that I can read his thoughts. I'd love to talk to him about something else. So, anyways,
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So when we talk about people who have influenced us, right? Like I'm gonna talk about two people really quick, and I'm just gonna make a quick pit stop here. So all my life, right, I grew up with people saying you can't do this, and that fueled me to do it, right?
yeah,
But then you meet someone that influences you to the point where they actually tell you that you can do it,
yeah,
and that messes with your head. That really does. And so you're like, wait, what? And you're gonna give me this opportunity? So that's my old pastor. Shout out to Pastor Juan. Sorry. Shout out to Pastor Juan. So like he was the first person in my life I could truly say that actually said, no, you can't do this.
yeah,
No, you can't do it. You know what I mean? And then that just like turned all these wheels and did all these things, right? Because there's only so much that you can do on your own, really. I mean, obviously we lean on God and he's got our back 110%, right? But then the things of the world are still the things of the world, right? And they're still like, you still need someone to tell you like, hey, maybe don't do this or maybe do that, or go for this. And no, I'm scared and I'm I don't know what's gonna happen. No, go for it and go for it. And he was really the first person that kickstarted everything for me, and just took it to the next level. So I went from an influence of you can't do it, so that influenced me to do things,
Yeah.
to all of a sudden, no, you can do it, and that messes with you, right? And it's a complete different, like it's just like a mind shift that you have to go through. But then, I'm kind of like you, right? Like I think some of the people that influence us, they have no idea that we exist in this world. So Erwin McManus, the pastor from Mosaic Church, the way he speaks about creativity is insane to me. Like I read his book, The Artisan Soul, and after that I was like sold.
Have you ever read his book, The Genius of Jesus?
Yes.
I'm in the middle of it right now. So I was
Just the
curious.
way he speaks about things and the way he opens things up, it messes with you.
Yeah.
And as a creative, like you're like, wait, what? Like I could have never this, and in that book, right, he talks about how David became a musician, how there is a creative inside of each and every one of us. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yes. And I've been trying to tell people that, right? But it's like, you're absolutely right. But the way he just says things and the way he speaks things. And so I looked up one of his quotes and I wanted to read this. And just because this kind of like says who he is, right? And it says, to create is to reflect the image of God. To create is an act of worship. So then, for a while I thought like, okay, I sit behind a computer and I do, graphics in Photoshop and Illustrator. I do videos on Premiere or whatever, right? But what am I really doing here? But every keystroke, every move of the mouse is an act of worship. And so when I try to explain that now, when I try to be an influence to young creatives, I'm like, everything you're doing is to worship God. Like everything that you are doing right now, as small as it may seem, as if it's going to be on the church screens for like literally 3 seconds flat, like you had an impact. And so I was trying to say that with my own words. But when I started reading Erwin McManus, like the way that he speaks those things, I'm like, that's what I've been trying to say. I just didn't have the words for it. So I feel like he gave me the words to be able to not only receive from his influence, but to be an influence. So, yeah. Shout out to the dude.
Shout out to Erwin McManus. I think that doing things with excellence is worship. And so you've kind of taken that from the creative standpoint. But I think that in general, doing things with excellence is worship. And I think sometimes we forget that. So that's really good, is what I'm trying to say.
I'm like, the whole point of the podcast, right, is who has influenced us. But I'm also going to throw a little challenge into the mix, right, is try to be an influence to somebody. And if you can't think of someone that you're influencing right now, then try to get in those circles. Try to get to meet people who you could possibly have a positive impact and positive influence. Point there, I said positive because there's things that you could hurt someone if you're not influencing them in the right way. But try to get in those circles where you have someone that looks up to you that you could possibly influence, because you could be changing a life. You could be, shaping tomorrow's leader, and you just never know.
That's good.
So that's what the podcast was about today. Caden, do you want to say anything else? Because we're closing in here on 20 minutes already. Let's go.
No, I wish I had some profound thought or thought-provoking question, but I don't have any. I don't have anything to really add to this.
Hey guys, it's been super fun. episode 1 is going to be dropping very soon. Thank you guys. I know you guys are going to love it. Hope you guys have as much fun listening to this, as much fun as we had creating this. We can't wait to build this community even more. I'm sure Caden's just as excited as I am. And guys, go out there. Think back at the influences that you've had in the past. Think back at the influence that shaped your life and try to influence someone in a positive way. Thank you so much. Y'all have a great day. We'll catch you on the next podcast.
Peace.